creators need M1, M1 Max, or M1 Ultra? I'm talking about you, me, us. Do we need 10, 20 core CPUs, 32, 64 core GPUs, several media encoders, 64 or even 128 gigabytes of unified memory? I've been using this maxed out 16-inch MacBook Pro M1 Max that was announced late 2021, and I have to say it is by far the most powerful computer I have ever owned. I really love it. I mean, that power, oh my god. I will show you some real-life examples, but this machine beats the $20,000 Mac Pro in a lot of areas. Luckily, some of these areas are actually my main area of work. What's that? Watch the video and you will find out. So, if you use creative softwares like Photoshop, Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro, and plugins for things like color grading, transitions, motion blur, you know it is just a hustle. Stick till the end because I will show you how Final Cut Pro 10 performs with plugins like Motion VFX and Color Finale and give you real-life comparisons that is just not out on YouTube. Back to the question. While I always have the urge to say, yes sir, we do, even though Apple's awesome announcement that makes me feel instant get is the answer, but the answer is not that simple. So I will give you the good, the bad. Yes, there are some bad things that may shock you. So the bad news is my favorite reply to these questions. It depends. And this, right there, this is why the decision is so hard, because it depends on many factors and only you can decide what value it brings to you. I mean, factors that you might have not even considered. I will reveal one crucial but highly overlooked aspect at the end of the video, so make sure to stick around till the end. Now, let's roll the intro. What's up everyone, Peter here. If you are new around here, let me introduce myself so you will know where my thoughts for this review are coming from. I am an entrepreneur, born and raised in Hungary, lived and worked in the States, Germany, Italy, Spain. In the past I ran a digital agency, then a startup. I was into photography since high school. My YouTube journey started around 4 years ago with the golden era of Casey Neistat daily vlogs. Then Peter McKinnon came along and I found myself falling in love with the process of creation. With the little big details like sound quality and sound effects, transitions, background blur, drones, you name it. I started with my phone, then somewhere on the road I switched to the iconic Panasonic GH5 and then to my current beauty, the Sony a7S III. I have gimbals, electronic sliders, many lights, mics. They are expensive, and more expensive the storage, the large files, and it is quite a hassle to edit them. My first Apple MacBook was the first Intel one back in 2006. So that's me. But what's your story? I'd love to get to know you better, so please make sure to share your story down in the comments. Okay. To cut the long story shorter, none of the maxed out Intel MacBook Pros could handle the H.265 10-bit 422 files from my Sony a7S III. I switched to the M1 MacBook Pro and finally I could get rid of proxies. I loved it, but it still had limits when I stacked several 120 FPS clips on each other and used multi-clamp, then applying color grading, plugins, titles. It was all beach ball and had to run proxies again. But now, that's gone. Hopefully for good. Now, right here in the middle, I will give you what I usually leave till the end, the decision. If you have invested in learning and of course spent money in expensive gear and you value your time or just get distracted and furious as I do when your computer is slower than you would wish it to work, well, it is worth all the money to get a proper gear. Of course, I could have gotten Mac Pros, the $20,000 one that are now beaten by the M1 Maxes and M1 Ultras, but yeah, it wasn't worth the money for me. But today, we live in a technological hockey stick where things that were way too expensive and out of the reach for so many of us, today are becoming more and more accessible. Talking about the A7S III and the M1 Max, you can get a production beast for a few $1,000s that used to cost tens of thousands. This is just awesome. It's just true. Our imagination is the limit. So there you have it. That's my 2 cents whether or not you should get the M1 Max or Ultra. But for you to make your own choice, let me share my experience with specific workflows and tell you what specification I put into my CTO MacBook Pro. I'm sure you know all the specs, but let's glance over it real quick. You have the 14-inch and the 16-inch option, starting from 2,250 euros, going up to a whopping 7,000 euros. Depending on things like if you get the M1 Pro with the 16-core GPU and 200 gigabit per sec memory bandwidth with just one video encoder and decoder engine, or you go up to the M1 Max with 24 or 32-core GPU with 400 gigabytes of memory bandwidth with double the video encode and decode engines and up to 64 gigabytes of unified memory and 8 terabytes of storage. My choice was the 16-inch version, since even though you can put the same specs in the 14-inch, but due to the thermal design, the 16-inch performs better. It has 1 terabyte of storage space, and I didn't feel like spending 400 to 1,000 euros on extra space, since I have external drives including the super fast Samsung X5, which gives me an extra terabyte, and it's just as fast as an internal SSD. The only thing I added was the 64 GB of unified memory instead of the 32 GB. The good, what I love. Let's start with the design. I love the fact that Apple was humble enough to go old school and bring back the ports for USB-Cs, HDMI, the MagSafe is back. We're gonna talk about it in a second, but before, the SD card slot. Yes, every creator needs that, and having dongles and externals has been such a hassle. And the boxier design, I just love it. The mini LED screen is the most beautiful one I've ever seen. It is the same tech that is in the 6,000 euros Pro Display XDR. Blacks are true blacks, it has 1000 nits brightness screen with 1600 nit peak with HDR content. The display features the ProMotion technology for adaptive refresh rate up to 120 Hz. Just a small caveat is that sometimes the white can gloss, like with the cursor, but it is barely noticeable. And the battery. I love the battery in the M1 already, and the iPhone 13, it can last a day easily. I mean super easily. But this powerhouse, I can go all day with full torque, and it has enough juice to go on as well. The trackpad and keyboard are excellent, as they have been for a few years now. First, I didn't really like the black design of the keys, but it grew on me and I think it looks dope. MagSafe is back. Yes, please. I loved it, I missed it, and now it's back. If you like it too, go like this video too. Of course, it was a great feature to be able to use the Thunderbolt port for charging and didn't need an extra plug. So now that the MagSafe is back, well, you still don't necessarily need it, since you can still charge the MacBook via the Thunderbolt port. So, for example, when I'm at my home studio, I just plug it into my dock and it instantly connects to all my peripherals and external display while charging it at the same time. And on the go, I can just use the MagSafe charger. By the way, I have a whole series dedicated to my home studio setup, so if you are into that kind of stuff, check it out, links in the description, under the like button, which you could press by the way. I'm not gonna dance around and keep you waiting for the shocking negatives till the end of the video, so let's just cut right to the chase. I left one thing out from the design because I am sure you were expecting the notch as a negative, but it's not. So it's the Easter egg here. Let me explain. If you look at it closely, Apple hasn't actually cut the notch into the real estate of the display, but did the opposite. Made the bezels thinner and increased the top of the screen with just as much as the upper menu bar. So in reality, you get more space for your screen since the menu has been moved up. And when you are in full screen mode, it just goes under the notch. Anyways, I use the macOS in dark mode, so I barely recognize the notch. Speaking of the camera, it's gotten better. It's a full HD instead of the old 720p, but still I'd prefer a dedicated real camera for call purposes. One thing I heard others complaining as well, it is the external monitor. I use the MacBook in clamshell mode quite often, and usually as soon as I hit the keyboard, it wakes up. But sometimes it doesn't. The worst scenario is that I have to take the MacBook out from its 12 South stand, open it up, then wait for my LG display to turn on, then close the MacBook, then wait for it to realize that it's in clamshell and the monitor turns black, then back again. It might not sound like a big deal, but if you encounter this on a daily basis, it's just annoying. And for its price tag, it shouldn't happen. I'm not sure if it is a hardware issue, but something is going on with macOS, and I'm hopeful that we will see a fix in a future update because it's just such a pain. The other thing is still with connectivity, specifically external hard drives. I have two Western Digital 20TB duos that I connect to the MacBook via a dock. Sometimes it doesn't wake up the drives and I have to power the drives off and reconnect them. There is a new feature in Monterey that puts the external hard drives to sleep when they are not used, but they should be awake when I use them, right? Also, I tried what happens if I turn that feature off, but the problem is still there. Again, might be a software issue, and fingers crossed that is going to be solved soon. It's just weird, because on one hand, the M1 Max MacBook Pro is really the most powerful computer that I've ever used, but this seemingly small issue can get to my nerve for one reason. These things take up quite some time, so the otherwise super speed for my workflow has a seeable marginal buffer. It adds like 20%, so please, Apple, just fix it. Did any of these happen with you? Let me know down in the comments. Okay, let's move on the things I love and my experience using this beast. Compared to the M1 MacBook, the power of course, it's a productivity powerhouse. I've never even come close to the top end of what this computer can do. I love that I don't even need to think of optimization and the MacBook will do whatever I want it to do, meaning that I can multitask and leave my everyday apps open, browsers with dozens of tabs, YouTube, email, Word, Excel, Keynote, Calendar, Notion, you name it. And on top of that, if I am in the middle of a video edit in Final Cut Pro 10, and working on some beats in Logic Pro 10, while I retouch some photos in Lightroom or Photoshop, it handles my heavy files and plugins and switches instantly like a charm. Let me give you a real-life example with Final Cut Pro 10. Here is a 2-minute project that I shot on my A7S III in H.265 10-bit 422. These are high-efficiency files that everybody says it's a pain to work with. Not just rendering, but during edit. Even with my M1 MacBook Pro. But the 16-inch M1 Max does it with no problem at all. Here I show you a screen recording of how slow the 13-inch M1 is and how smooth the M1 Max is. It's amazing and a delight to work with it. As you see, I use multi-camera angles, lot of clips, compound clips, apply many layers of color corrections and color finale as well. I use motion VFX transitions, Pixel Film Studio stabilizations and built-in stabilization. Just for the sake of a comparison, here is the render time. It just crushes the M1. And here is a point where I'd like to bring in the new Mac Studio and the M1 Ultra. If you don't do crazy 3D animations in Blender or something similar, it is literally impossible to get better times on this level. Even with the high efficiency files that are super hard to edit, the M1 Max already is so fast and smooth during editing and multitasking that the double the number of everything in the Ultra just don't add anything. So yeah, this really is the sweet spot. I dare to say that even with the M1 Pro with only 32GB of RAM could be more than enough and work just fine. So you could get this infinite performance for even less. Also, consider how important portability is for you. If you work at your desk most of the times, the baseline Mac Studio is a bang for your buck. I use quotation marks because the baseline Studio has the same specs as this maxed out MacBook Pro, except the 1/2 TB storage. But still, you can get this performance for literally half the price if you don't need portability. Think about that. Okay, another benchmark. I checked that you can use 90+ tracks in Logic with plugins just fine, but who needs that many? Final thoughts coming up. I really like convenient quality of life improvements year over year with all my tech gear. Getting this laptop will future-proof you for such a long time. You could connect up to 3 6K monitors and 1 4K. I love technology that I don't need to worry about and just get the job done. The 16-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro does that and goes even beyond. With its amazing battery life and inexhaustible power it provides, I can only recommend it. It's without the doubt the fastest, the best looking, most portable large laptop I've ever seen. Just one fun fact, that for some reason, just knowing that I get to use this beast every day increases my productivity and puts me in GTD mode to create more. Of course, nothing is perfect. Those shortcomings need to be fixed, but if they do, no. When Apple does fix it, I dare to say that it will make the 16-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro the best notebook of all time. Period. Do you agree? What do you think? Share your thoughts down in the comments under the like button, which, by the way, you should press if you like this video so far. Also, if this is the first time we met and you found this video helpful, consider hitting that subscribe button with the notification bell as well. I just have 2 things left to say. First, thank you so much for watching till the end of this video, and second, I would like to raise your attention to some other important factors of your creative workflow, if you will. Since even though your computer is the main character of your digital work, but there is so much more to it, and oh boy, you will spend so much time and money on them. This is why I created my home office studio tour series where I share how I design my ideal work environment. You will find amazing gear that has been tested and works with the MacBook just like a charm. So why don't you click on right here on one of these videos, or if you are into creamy B-rolls, check out this video. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.